Welcome everyone to this session on well-being or measures of well-being and progress. Sort of looking from session to session, trying to figure out where everyone was. So two speakers and hopefully lots of questions. I'm going to start with Kerstin, who's launched a progress indicators at 10:45 this morning. Launched at 10:45 this morning the progress indicators, and then Bryan afterwards. So Kerstin, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Kerstin Maurus. I work for Statistics New Zealand in the macroeconomics and environment statistics team, and I'm here today with my colleague Bronwyn Newton. We are here to give you a demonstration of two new web products that Statistics New Zealand has recently released. So one of them is the New Zealand Progress Indicators, which was released today. And the other one is the New Zealand Social Indicators. So Bronwyn will talk a bit more about that. So we've decided to do this presentation together because the way we think about those two products is that they're actually complementary. They're different, but they have also a lot in common. So complementary is really the right word for it. Broadly speaking, both resources provide easy access to up-to-date information about different aspects of life in New Zealand. We are also represented at the Stats stand, so if you haven't already, please come and visit us in the large room where you have had lunch and breakfast this morning. We will be there also tomorrow, and this is your chance really to have a play and talk to us face to face, and we are after your feedback, so we'd love to see you there. So I will start with the New Zealand Progress Indicators. This is the landing page which went live today at 10:45. What is New Zealand Progress Indicators? Tupuranga Aotearoa. It is a snapshot style publication that brings together 16 key indicators from the economic, environmental and social domains. Together, they present a picture of how well we are living, how we're using our resources and how the resources are distributed, and what we are leaving for future generations. We are reusing previously published data from across the OSS, so everything that is up here has already been published previously. And I'll show you a bit more. So on this landing page, you can actually bring up all the indicators. We are interested in tracking long-term trends. So we want to see how New Zealand has been changing since the 1980s. We assess for each indicator if the change over a selected time period is positive, negative, or neutral. And we're using a traffic light system to make this clear and a change symbol. So these are the change symbols and the traffic light system. So when you look at this, you really get the idea. It's a dashboard of 16 indicators covering a range of topics in one place. Achieving progress is a balancing act. And these three domains and these 16 indicators are closely interrelated. Change in one area usually triggers change in another. The indicators are underpinned by a coherent and robust capital-based framework that ensures consistency of the reporting. And we've been using this framework since 2008. This is the third edition of New Zealand Progress Indicators. We've seen a lot of increase in demand for this type of reporting, a dashboard-style reporting, both nationally and internationally. So I'll show you a little bit more. I only have 7 minutes, so I better rush. So up here is the main navigation bar. For example, if someone, let's say a policy analyst, was to write a paper about the efficiency of the New Zealand economy, so naturally that person would probably choose to go in through economic. And we've got 7 indicators here. And I will bring up the energy intensity indicator. This is what we call a report card. So up here we've got the title of the indicator, then a few bullets of analysis, really short, what you can see on the graph. And further down we've got the graph, which is using a new technology, so-called high charts. So the graph is interactive. I can click this on and off. And I can actually also bring up the data points on this line, which is for some reason not working right now. Further down, we've got a direct link to the source data. So previously I've said that this is a data reuse initiative. So this particular indicator is from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, MB, and is part of their Energy in New Zealand 2013 report. So if I clicked on here, this would take me out to the MB website and to that actual report. And further down here is the original data table. I'm just going back. So there's a bit more information further down here, changes we made to the source data, more about the measure, a definition, and some technical changes that we made since the last publication in 2010. So it's really kind of short, it's not too wordy, but through this new dissemination format, we're really hoping that by linking to other agencies and to other reports, that this can cover a lot which we are unable to cover here. Up here also the CSV, a CSV table. This is pretty much the table that generates the graph, and more links to other agencies who are better placed really to make an assessment of energy-related topics than Stats is. Okay, I quickly want to jump also into the social topic, because I said in the beginning that the way we think about New Zealand progress indicators and New Zealand social indicators is that they're complementary. So I would like to show you what I mean by that. Up here, you've got an indicator, access to early childhood education. And when I click into this, we end up on this indicator page. It's fairly limited, it's one indicator. So what we've done is we're linking out to New Zealand social indicators, who are actually showing a few more breakdowns here, and also give an international comparison. Great. That's me. Short demonstration, and please come and see us at the stand. I would love to talk to you face to face about this.
Well, thank you, Kerstin, for introducing a little bit of the social indicators for me. Now, we haven't got much time, so I just thought I'd make 3 key messages. First one is that the New Zealand Social Indicators is an information gateway to important social statistics from across government. So it takes the most important social indicators produced by Stats New Zealand and a range of other external agencies and repackages them into one easy-to-use place on our website. So that's key message number 1. Number 2, New Zealand Social Indicators is not a monitoring resource, so we haven't got any analysis or commentary, but we do have links to where that information is available elsewhere. And number 3, as Kerstin already said earlier, we've got a stand, and this social indicators in particular is very responsive to customer demands. So we want to hear what you expect to see on there, content-wise and format-wise. So before I go on to showing you more of the site, why did we do NZSI, or New Zealand Social Indicators? Well, customers have told us that it can be quite hard to find social stats from across government. They're produced by a range of agencies. There's no one place to find them. They're often in different formats. So we responded by providing this sort of one-stop shop information gateway so people can access, understand and use social statistics that they know are up to date and of good quality. So users have the confidence that when they go onto this, they can find and they've got all the information they need to understand and use social stats on key topics. Right, so I'll show you the landing page. That's right, that link doesn't work at the moment. but essentially the landing page has all 10 topics there. And I will go into this one. Now, there are actually 45 indicators up there across the 10 topics. The most popular pages at the moment are health, standard of living and labour market, but there's all these other ones as well, social connections, discrimination, culture and identity. So each topic page starts with an explanation of what it is. That's very high level. We're not providing any sort of normative judgments about what's going on. We just introduce the topic at high level, and we have a number of graphs. Well, here are all the specific indicators. It ranges from contact with friends and family through to voluntary work. So if I click on, let's say, loneliness, you can either click there or there. So we explain what loneliness is, how it's being measured. In this case, it's the General Social Survey as the data source. Below here, the stats themselves are presented in the pie charts or dynamic graphs, so you can actually play around with what you want presented. You can see what value is in each bar. If you want to look at, this just shows a proportion of people who felt lonely in the last 4 weeks. So you've got here none of the time, a little of the time, some of the time, and most of the time. So these people here felt lonely none of the time in that 4-week period. So if you wanted just to display this, you actually click what you don't want, which I find a wee bit counterintuitive, but so you can play around with that. And each graph has got a link to the bottom of the page, which is where all the information that you need to understand and use the measure is there. And then, importantly, there's actually a lot more links to analysis and reports and other relevant stats that have been done. So we've got some NZ stat tables there. I think these are more dynamic tables and graphs. And then we've got an analytical report. Yeah, so that's social connections and loneliness. So I'll just conclude with a couple of messages. This isn't a first release mechanism, so at the moment is what we call a dissemination tool. It's about 50-50 Stats New Zealand data and 50% other agencies. So we get the data available, we get it from them and we get it up on the website as quick as we can to make sure it's most up to date. And it's not an exhaustive list of social stats. There's the criteria that they need to go through to get up on the site. Initially, it was driven by what was on the social report and in the social cohesion indicators and the progress indicators framework. Oops, so that's me.
Yes, so I'm Bryan Perry from MSD, and I have responsibility for the incomes report, which some of you will be familiar with, and more generally with responsibility for the advice to government on matters to do with poverty, hardship, persistent hardship, living standards, inequality and so on through the MSD policy stream. And you would have, I hope by now, got a sheet. I think it was enough for everyone. Our deep-seated modelling predicted there would be 52 people here, and I think it's turned out about right. And I'm going to take you through a gallop today on the background to and description of the Material Wellbeing Index, which is really getting its first airing today. There was a small airing of it at a conference in this very room a year ago, but we were very tentative. Now we're a lot more solid. So I'm going to gallop through some of it and go more slowly on others, and we'll see how we go. Colin, what's the time frame here now that we're...
15 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. So there's a great interest in standard of living from a whole range of people. And sometimes there are some who would say it's just those left of centre who are interested, and the dry right Tories couldn't give a stuff. But I can assure you, in talking to ministers and in talking to others, every politician, every party is interested in living standards. They just come at it in different ways in terms of how to raise living standards. Some of the questions we ask about living standards are up there on the screen. But the meaning of standard of living is something we just need to spend a little moment on, not to make a cosmic utterance about this is what it means, but to lead you by the hand and say this is how I'm using it. And it's not sort of this is my truth and you can have yours. There's also just to anchor it into more of the way the international literature uses it. One of the ways in which we talk about it is we say we're better off than our parents. And we might be coming to a generation that can no longer say that, but up till now we've been able to say that in the West anyway. That's one idea of it. For someone of my age, you begin to say, how's the standard of living going to be in retirement? And we have a certain idea of what we mean by it there. The GFC really hit the living standards of the middle classes, especially in the UK and maybe in the US. As Treasury have, our goal is higher living standards for all, and all political parties have something like that in their own languages. When I talk about standard of living, and in terms of the Material Wellbeing Index, I'm limiting it very to the material guy. It's just about what money can buy. It's not about quality of life, more generally. It's not about well-being more generally, which includes a whole lot of other factors as well. And in fact, the way that we sort of narrow it down and hone in on standard of living and material well-being is to look at it from two different angles. It's the degree to which individuals and households have the essentials, and I'll come back to that in a moment, and also have the freedom to purchase non-essentials. Now, there's been a lot of work done in the UK and in Europe about what societies think as the essentials or the necessities. And there's, in Europe at least, there's a strong consensus across countries as to what that is, what they are. We don't have the same surveys in New Zealand, but from what we do have, we don't look a great deal of different from anywhere else there. So, talking about measuring living standards in that concept of what money can buy. GDP per capita, very useful for getting average trends over time and inter-country relativities. I put okay-ish because we're all aware of its limitations. But it doesn't give any information on the distribution across households. So if we're interested in a distributional analysis, that is how some people do better than others and so on, then we need something different. Now the HF there stands for the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation in the US has put together what they call the Amenities Index. And they've got a list of around about 100 amenities, household durables to us probably, that households have in the US. And they show a very strong rise in the Amenities Index over time. The trouble for using that as an index at a point in time to distinguish between households of high and low living standards is that most households in New Zealand have the fridge and the washing machine and the stove and the oven and the car and so on. And it doesn't really allow you to discriminate between different levels of living standards. We explored the possibility of using the quality of those items. And as long as you stay clumped, that is, say in deciles, it's not too bad. But when you drill down and get into individual households, there's too much variability, because even some fairly well-off households have some pretty low-quality stuff because they're happy with it and they just keep cruising. So household incomes, of course, and the incomes report goes into that in detail. Income's easily understood, commonly used, the data's available. Government policy can directly influence income, at the lower end especially, and through taxes right across. But in the end, the challenge with income is that income is just one input into living standards. And that's the real problem with using income to assess living standards. Now, I'll just bang through that and just whip that up. I just want you to get the impression there. We measure current income and go into a whole lot of detail about it as a proxy for getting at living standards. But really there are so many other things that affect a household's living standards that there are big questions about the usefulness of that even, and the usefulness of half my life at work in doing that. But nevertheless, there is a big interest in income distribution, and it is relevant and so on. Just for those of you who are not familiar with non-income measures, what do we mean by that? Because that's the essence of what I'm on about today. Can we use non-income measures to get at living standards at a household level? Now, the necessities and essentials are a relative piece of cake, and there's 20, 30, 40 different indicators you can use, and in many ways it doesn't matter which dozen you pick. They'll all work fine, they all give roughly the same results. That's okay. Then you move to desirable non-essentials that most have, and they're not too bad either, because most have them, you presume that most want them. The difficult area is desirable non-essentials that indicate higher living standards. The bottom end's okay, the middle, you're not bad. But for some people, there's a great desire to own a holiday home, and for others to have a wine cellar, for others to do a regular overseas trip, and for others to spend quadrillion dollars on clothes. So you can't really just ask questions about that as if that's going to tell you about higher living standards. And they're the harder things to get at. Now, in a more general way, just check my time here. The finish time was when, Colin? 3. No, I made it after that, yeah. 5+3. That's fine. Yeah, good. There's a big movement around the world to move away from income measures to non-income measures for the reasons I've said. We've developed a material wellbeing index that is outlined in the sheet that's gone around to you, and that's the summary of it there. And one of the cool things about it is that in contrast to using just a deprivation index, that's the red line, which goes dead after about 30% of people, because when you get above that, most people at the top 70% have all the things that are essential. So you can't distinguish very well on that top 70%. The blue line is actually a slightly standardised material wellbeing index cumulative frequency curve that shows at the bottom it'll do what the deprivation index does, but it allows us to distinguish further up, which is really good. Now, calibrating an index like this is quite tricky. One of the ways of doing it is you have a look at this. This ranks everyone by their index score, puts them into deciles, and then has a look, the red curve there, they are the number or the percentage of necessities that those deciles don't have. So at the bottom, there's a big don't have, and then that diminishes. The blue is the non-essentials that people have. So there are people at the bottom, people have non-essentials when they don't have all the essentials. And every now and again that's because they're just tragic and can't budget. But most of the time, it's very understandable. When you're on the bones of your ass, you've got to make a decision about, do I get the absolute essentials all the time, or do I go without a bit of food and have a bit of enjoyment? And those sort of rationing decisions are evident in that sort of curve there. Now, the next step one can go to is to say, well, let's try and make a little bit of sense out of this. And so we've built 7 different levels of material well-being. And the ones we are really, really sure about are what we've labelled the hardship levels at the bottom. We're pretty happy about calling the top end high. That didn't require a lot of time. And in between, we've just spread people out. You can choose slightly different things if you wish. This works pretty well with a whole lot of other validation we've done, which read the book later. So you get there about 12% of the population in the hardship zone. 13% just getting by, we've called it. And that's the 13% there. They still are missing a lot of stuff, a lot of the basics, but they have a bit of the non-essentials. They're just getting by. There's lots of ways in which the Material Wellbeing Index can be used. And one of them is to show how different population groups fare one with the other, one compared to the other. Now take age groups here. By having the 7 different levels, you can create a picture that is worth 1,000 words. And you'll see there, the immediate thing you see is how older New Zealanders, relative to kids, are on average a lot better off. They also have way fewer, or should I say a lower percentage, at that bottom end. The hardship end I just randomly split into 2 equal halves. So 2 equal halves, very good, Bryan, in half, so that, that's right, so that we could sort of see what the depth was like in different groups. And so when you come through to looking at household types, the family types in this case, you can see it shows up how sole parents in the hardship zone, they really get pretty dense down in the depths of it. And so it can show all that sort of thing. Over time, this is out of the incomes report, it shows the impact of the GFC on living for kids. And then as the turnaround comes, it all starts to get better, and no doubt it'll go down here. Ireland used this sort of approach hugely. Very interesting thing here. The red line, that's their equivalent of the Material Wellbeing Index, just at the deprivation end. Things got pretty stuffed. But when you use a relative income measure, you wouldn't even know there was a problem. Because the median came down, as well as the incomes below the median going down, nothing much changed. And that's happened in New Zealand before too. However, Ireland also, through the EU, publish another series whereby you anchor the level of the poverty line in a given year, called a fixed line approach, and see what happens. And that's a lot more in sync with material deprivation. the fixed line measure is way more useful than any of the full relative lines. And at MSD, we pump out the thing of must use multiple measures. And I get deeply frustrated and even angry when I see public servants and NGOs and ginger groups, left, right and centre, picking on one indicator because it suits their cause, or because they're lazy, or because they've only got room in a set of statistics for one. Not good, not sensible, and need to think about it. One final thing to wrap up on for those of you like things like that. Very good Cronbach's alpha. We've got all the indicators now in the HES. And so starting with the HES from last year, we're going to be able to start publishing on the Material Wellbeing Index, following on from the ELSI indicator that we used to have that we've enhanced in this indicator, in this thing here. How does it actually perform against other measures? Just again, get the impression here, the Material Wellbeing Index has a very positive association with all those factors there. That helps give it a bit of validation. Validation's never finished. You've got to keep on testing. And it also goes the other way too. If you have a look at the degree of the middle one there, damp or mould is a major problem. When you get the index going, it throws all the problem down the bottom end. We've got a 9-item version going into the GSS, into the General Social Survey.